Right. So session 2, we are going to be looking at reinforcement, and I've put here, the magic ingredient and the most misunderstood training tool. So we're going to be talking about dispelling some of the myths and defining reinforcement in terms of behavioral science, so not mainstream use of the word. And interestingly enough, when I was preparing this session, quite a few things popped up in terms of language and how, when we are referring to training and the science of training, some of our mainstream understanding of some words can actually confuse us or add some misunderstandings around what we're actually meaning. So one of them, for instance, caused an issue with one person last time. She had a real issue around the word training, and I thought that was fascinating. So when we're talking about words such as reinforcement, we're talking about it from, in this example, we're going to be talking about it in from the behavioral science point of view. And we've just done a brief recap on the philosophy and values, and I chose those icons. I was thinking, people are having, there were some alarm bells down here. Some people were having to be possibly really challenged about what their values and beliefs are in terms of training. Some people may have had questions. I know a couple of people, it was just straightforward. It's what they believe in, it's what they use. But I think for many people, understanding that your values drive your decision making can almost be, well, it was for me, kind of a light bulb moment. And you go, well, it kind of makes sense, but we often don't consciously think about what we believe and how that translates into our behavior on a daily basis. Another thing that we talked about last week was beliefs linked to values. And something I wanted to just sort of raise briefly was our perception of who we are when we're around our horses. We know that there isn't just one type of person or one type of equine experience. And I just sort of threw together some words there. People are often called horsey. You're a horsey type. Some people call themselves trainers, riders. There's a lot of people moving towards just ownership of horses now and sort of questioning the whole thing around riding itself. So we have a real range of people involved with horses, and it's our perception of who we are and what we do with our horses that might also influence the type of training that we're going to be investigating, or who we're going to listen to, or who we're going to reach out to. And this is just getting us to think that there's more to it than just training our horses or working with our horses. It's there's a lot of strong influences around how we identify with ourselves. We also talked about the dream relationship. And some of the things that I discovered in my journey is, I love that photo of that poor person. You don't want to see the outcome there. But what we believe is possible is also going to influence what our experience with our horses. So our previous experience, and that may not even be with horses, just our previous life experience and expectations around animal relationships or how you train, how you teach. A lot of people strongly influenced by their parenting. It's what we know, what we feel comfortable with. And we have all had experiences where some of our foundational knowledge of what we know is rattled a bit by somebody else's input or somebody else's experience. Excuse me, it also might be what we've heard. We haven't necessarily experienced it or seen it, but we've heard it from other people. And that's going to colour our decision making if we're not clear in our own values and our own beliefs. So to some degree, our perception of reality is going to dictate our relationships, and especially our relationships with our horses. And just finally, that line, our values influence our decisions. And I think last time I shared, the famous Tony Robbins quote, all decision making is value clarification. So every time you're making a decision, you're demonstrating what your values are. Excuse me. Reinforcement. We have two types of reinforcement. We have negative and positive reinforcement. We're going to be talking about it in relationship to horses. Now, negative and positive reinforcement both result in an increase in behavior. So that's the outcome from the application of either negative or positive reinforcement. So an official definition of reinforcement is anything that increases the likelihood of a certain type of behavior. And it has to be applied before the behavior. Now, we know timing is absolutely crucial in the application of negative reinforcement. I have often said to people that timing and positive reinforcement, there's a little bit more leeway, it's a little bit more forgiving. You can still end up in having some issues, but with negative reinforcement, if you don't remove that pressure, the minute you get the behavior you want, your horse is not going to make the connection. And a lot of our problems around the application of negative reinforcement is simply timing issues. And as I said, the outcome of applying negative or positive reinforcement is an increase in a behavior, or the increased likelihood of a behavior. Now, negative reinforcement, much to some people's discernment, or concern, underpins traditional horse training. It is the very foundation of traditional horse training. And interestingly enough, it also underpins many alternative options out there. So for instance, natural horsemanship, Parelli, the basis of those training systems is still negative reinforcement. I think the confusion around this again comes back to our language and the term negative. And I will be touching on that in a moment, about the actual meaning of negative in this instance. But it's really important to understand that negative reinforcement is at the heart of what most of our interactions are with horses in a traditional sense. So negative in this term is simply the mathematical use of the word, which is removal, minus, take away. And so I've got a photo, obviously, of a rider applying the aid, the horse walks on and the aid comes off. The pressure is removed, you're taking something away. And it is an aversive, it's considered an aversive. So the actual reinforcing aspect of it is the removal of it. There's your definition: the removal of something aversive that increases the likelihood of a behavior. So I've given some common examples there. You know, all our aids are essentially negative reinforcement. If you're loading a horse with a whip, tapping him, and he goes into the float and you take it away, negative reinforcement. We do a lot of moving horses over. We'll touch them or give them a push, and the minute they move over, we take our hands away. So it's embedded in our interactions with horses. The common issues around pressure release or the application of negative reinforcement is essentially the need to increase the pressure if you don't get the outcome you want. And this is where we go back to timing and the need to ensure that your timing is spot on. So the minute the horse makes a move in the right direction, you release that pressure. So they make a clear connection to, oh, I do this and the pressure comes off. But all too often we keep nagging away, and that confusion then creates a dull horse, a horse that is very unresponsive, and we need to increase that pressure to get the result that we want. Finally, a common misconception is that it's bad and can be avoided. So, you know, negative connotations, bad, the use of the word in the common use of the word meaning a negative outcome, a bad outcome. And also the idea that we can avoid it and we can remove it from our interactions completely. To some degree we can, but I think it is, again, as I'm saying, it's embedded in so much that we do in our interactions with our horses that I don't see that it can be often avoided completely. So that's something just to think about. And is it necessary to avoid it completely? Positive reinforcement, on the other hand, is the addition of something. So you add something in. So you get the behavior that you want and you add something in. So rather than simply removing the pressure, you can also add in something on top of that, which is the positive aspect. The grey, well, not the grey area, the tiny bit of interesting aspect, that's a bit of a mouthful, is that negative reinforcement and cues. I've had this discussion with people, for instance, that your aids can simply be a cue. So you can squeeze with your legs, that's the cue to walk on. It becomes negative reinforcement if you have to keep applying it. But if it's just a cue to walk on and the horse walks on and then you mark it, for instance, and add in positive reinforcement, you could say that the leg was a cue. So that's an interesting thought to have a think about in terms of when does it become negative reinforcement. Definition: the addition of something the animal likes that increases the likelihood of a behavior. Now, the key thing here is the animal's got to like it. We do this a lot. When I was teaching, we do this a lot in schools. We make assumptions that because we like it, our children are going to like it and find it reinforcing. Okay. So stickers, for example, I used to talk to teachers about the use of stickers with boys. They often are not interested. And so people will say, oh, these reinforcement programs don't work. The application of reinforcement is really important. It's only reinforcement if it increases the behavior. And that's another, again, coming back to the definition. The outcome dictates whether it's reinforcing or not. So if you don't get a behavioral increase or the behavior that you want, potentially what you're adding in is not reinforcing for that particular animal. So we had a discussion, we touched on last week about the use of food in a training program. And is it actually essential to be food? Does it have to be food? The reason that we use food with animals is because it's what's called a primary reinforcer. Most animals will work for food. That's a generalization, but it is based obviously on the fact that most do. And I often say to people, it's similar with people with money. Most people will work for money, not everybody, but generally money is highly reinforcing for work-related behaviors. Okay, so if someone offered, I really like chocolate, but I'm not going to do a day's work for a bar of chocolate. So remembering that whatever you're using or wanting to use as positive reinforcement, the animal has to like it for it to be effective. So common examples, again, adding a reward after a horse loads into a float. So a lot of people do that intuitively. The horse goes in and they'll give him, you know, some of his feed or a bucket of feed or whatever. A really common issue which causes a lot of issues around positive reinforcement is indiscriminate feeding with no plan. So if the animal does not know when and why the food is being delivered, you have the potential to create a monster. If you have got no clear boundaries, if it's not part of a training program or a plan, it can create havoc. And again, I go back to children and lack of structure or lack of clear boundaries about when they get access to something and when they don't. You get the spoilt child or the child that's confused and will grab something because they're not sure when it's coming again or when they're going to have access to it. Common misconceptions, and for some reason it's so strong in the horse world, is that food is not good for horses or creates sparging. It does have that potential, but that is why we need to be clear on how we apply positive reinforcement. So this is where a little knowledge can be a dangerous thing. Another misconception is that positive reinforcement is good and it's a way of being around your horse. It's just, you know, I'm really positive around my horse. No, it is a procedure. It's a method of training. Another one is that positive reinforcement is just being nice and gentle, and you'll spoil your horse if you do that. Again, misapplication of a procedure. The horse earns the reinforcement. The horse works for reinforcement. We all work to get the outcome or to get the reinforcer that we want. If we're not working, if the horse isn't performing, if the behavior that we want isn't being seen, then we need to look at the reinforcement and what we're actually giving that horse. A rather funny story around not just what you're giving, but how much is some of you may have heard this story before, but I'll say it again. It's an elephant story, and an elephant trainer had contacted a behavior specialist and said, you know, this elephant the behavior was dropping off. He used to do this amazing reversal around his pen. He'd walk backwards, and he now wasn't doing it anymore. And the behavior specialist said, oh, can you just talk me through what happens? And the guy said, well, I give the cue, and he kind of starts and he does a little bit, but when he was doing it before, he used to get a peanut at the end. And the behavior specialist said, I think I know your problem. I think I know what's going on here. So if you're going to be asking an animal to do a really difficult task, you want to make sure it's worth their while. And possibly the peanut was not reinforcing enough for that animal. Another interesting point that I've encountered, and some of you may have heard this as well, is that negative reinforcement is natural. You know, the horses naturally, you know, apply pressure to each other to get another horse to move away. And, you know, there's the alpha mare stories, and a lot of natural horsemanship talks about the fact that negative reinforcement is the way horses interact. And what is often missing is the fact that positive reinforcement is also out there. The very act of grazing, a horse lowers his head, which is the behavior, and gets access to grass, positive reinforcement. So the lowering of the head and the grazing, he gets, oh, I get grass, natural, just happens. Seeking shade, a horse walks to a tree and gets relief from the sun. Seeking companionship, moving to another horse and having a scratch, all examples of positive reinforcement in the natural environment. So just remember that they're both operating, they're both out there. I think positive reinforcement comes into its own in problem solving. I think that's possibly where we get the foot in the door, working with people, encouraging people. It's easy to see it in action, and it's particularly easy to see it solving problems. Because you don't have to increase the pressure, it is particularly useful with horses and behavioural issues that escalate. Again, you know, I'm going to keep going back to my classroom experience. If you're getting an escalation in behaviour, the last thing you want to be doing is adding more pressure. And that pressure can be talking to somebody, or it can be adding pressure in a situation with the horse. The beauty of using positive reinforcement is you've got a solid history of good outcomes, and you can cash that in when you're dealing with a problem. I've put there that it fosters trust. Now, trust is a construct. We can't see it, and unless we can define it, it's one of those ones that we're all going to have varying definitions. I've defined trust in this case as consistency, consistently getting a desired outcome. So the horse trusts you because you are consistent, you deliver consistently. Another feature of problem solving is you don't have to go over threshold. You don't have to push your horse through something. We know that when we push any living creature into a fearful or stressful situation, we get less cooperation, we get less good outcomes, and they're less likely to learn what we want them to learn, they're more likely learning that we are linked to the fearful situation. It's often thought that, oh, they're not learning anything, but learning is happening regardless of whether we think so or not. It just may not be what we anticipate them to be learning. So if you are associated with a stressful or fearful situation, you then become what is called like a conditioned punisher or a conditioned aversive, because you start to signal to them stress and fear. And that's really underestimated in dealing with difficult situations, because it can happen accidentally. And so if you find animals getting fearful around people, it's often because of that sort of experience. They're linked to a fearful situation. And finally, you maximize learning, and the reverse is your association with pleasant outcomes. You become a signal or a conditioned positive aspect because of that connection with good outcomes. So I really feel that positive reinforcement comes into its own in that problem-solving zone, prevents escalation, and maximizes learning. Basic problems. Keep it simple. Start where your horse is at and reinforce small steps. I'm just going to show you a little bit of this clip. I had done some previous work with this horse, with the tarp, but what I want to show you here, there's two things I want to show you here. One of them is solving a problem of spooking with positive reinforcement. The other one is the horse completely at all times has a choice here. He's free, or at liberty, as they say. He's in the arena, there's quite a bit of grass around, and at any time he can walk away. So I have deliberately trained my horses this way because I want to see, A, are they enjoying it, and B, is it actually successful? So I'll just play a little bit of this clip. And so I've given him the cue to stand. And he's quite responsive to verbal, to talk, a good boy. But I do mark the fact that he stood there with the whistle. And so I'm pretty clear here that I'm not pushing this horse over threshold. I'll stop it there. So very basic application there, keeping it simple, starting where the horse is at and reinforcing the behavior. Ooh. More challenging problems. Still keep it simple, still start where your horse is at, and still reinforce small steps. Now, this horse is actually mine, and he is or was a terrible loader. And we took him right back to basics. There's a friend of mine who trained him for me so that I could film it. And we used target training, and we were ultimately heading towards freeloading, which is being able to lead him up to the ramp, point to the target in the float. He would go in, touch the target, hold on the target, and that was where we were aiming for. This clip just shows we've still got the rope at the moment. We're still using the target, and it shows him walking into the float. And I'll just play you a little bit of this. And you can hear the click. So I think you can hear her saying, oh, because we were actually only having the rope as a prop. The primary way of doing it was him following the target. So we wanted to not be using negative reinforcement in terms of tugging him. And another more challenging problem, worming your horse. And again, keep it simple. Start where your horse is at and reinforce small steps. So here is Jackson again being my model. And I've got the empty worm tube. And again, he's got a choice whether he stays there or wanders off. And I want to know if he's actually, if the training is successful and if he's engaged in that process. The interesting thing with this example is I'd started off training it as a target. So like he had to touch it. So I'll just show you a bit of this one. So the initial criteria is just that he touches it. You can see already he's starting to kind of curl the lip for opening. So I cash in on that. Good boy. And I also want the head up. Good boy. Good boy. Good boy. And you can see there that already I'm just getting a little bit of a delay before he gets before I mark it. So he's got to have it in his mouth for a little bit of time before he gets the click. So a little bit of, I can get away with that with him because he does actually know this. But you can see how quickly you can shape up a behavior, and that is a challenging one. We've got an expert on the panel here. We have someone who's pretty good at this, don't we, Anna? She's had great results worming horses in the community. So what next? What next? I wrote this up as more of a challenge, really. I feel that encouraging people to look at positive reinforcement, not just with horses, but on a broader scale, can be really helpful when you make this mental shift. And it was interesting that Caroline talked about her recent experience, that it was values driven, because interestingly enough, positive reinforcement is much bigger than just reinforcing a behavior. There is so much more to it. And I've written here, exploring examples in your daily life. It's a bit like the horses going in under the tree for shade, starting to recognize where it's happening in your life or where it's actually missing. So for example, I've put, being served in a shop. So you've gone in, you've ordered, or you've picked your coffee, or picked your food up or something, you're standing there, and someone reinforces that behavior by talking to you and taking your money and being nice, etc. Positive reinforcement, your behavior of joining the queue, standing there, is reinforced. Waiting for someone to finish with something that you want and then saying thank you or whatever, positive reinforcement. The last one, I've had some interesting discussions with people, at home with your partner or your children. Often massive opportunities are missed for positive reinforcement to be added in to your daily life. Trial using it. Have a go. Notice the results, and being aware of those differences in the outcomes can be fascinating. So the difference I put here between saying thank you when someone's finished with something that you wanted versus hurrying them up while they're using it. So while someone, can you hurry up, please? I really need this. Versus waiting and then saying, thanks, I needed that or appreciate that. Another example, walking away versus adding something more meaningful to end a transaction with somebody. So you've just been served, they've given you your whatever, and yeah, you just walk away versus saying, thanks a lot, have a nice day, or whatever. Notice the results, and notice not only the effect on the other person, but the last column is notice the impact on you. Notice how you feel when you're using it, when you're conscious of it. The interesting thing that I noticed, especially with the horses, once you bring it back to the horses, is your perception of situations that trigger you. So for instance, people who get really uptight about loading their horses, on a time frame, I've got to get this horse done, I'm off, and you get triggered. And so when you're then doing something that's aversive or adding in something, that emotional component to an aversive situation can just be a recipe for disaster versus using positive reinforcement. And what a byproduct of it is, what you're really looking for is that you are then focused and you start looking for opportunities to add positive reinforcement in. So it is definitely more than just a training system, because in order to do it effectively, you need to be looking for what you want. So instead of noticing the fact that your horse isn't on the bit or isn't engaged or isn't this, you start looking for what he is doing and marking that. And that is probably, for me, the most powerful and underappreciated aspect of choosing positive reinforcement over more traditional methods. because we're naturally hardwired to look for what's wrong or what's not working. And this comes back to again, the application of food. We're naturally tough, you know, they should do it because I said so. You know, we can't get soft with these horses. We can't get soft with these kids. They need to harden up. They need to, and I'm just going, really? I wouldn't work for too long without some sort of positive reinforcement coming my way. So if you want a different relationship with your horse, if you want a different outcome, this is a very interesting way to experiment, because it will impact on you in more ways than is obvious initially, if that makes sense. So using positive reinforcement with your horses will often rub off into daily life, but equally, if you start off there and looking for examples, that might help you to make that shift with your horse. If you're sort of struggling with, well, how does this have meaning to me? Where does this fit in for me? And also consider that those problems, I think I said in this whole series of workshops that I was going to be talking about, things might be just fine for you. You're just doing really well. But every now and again, you have that little thing that's not working. Or equally, you may just go, I'd quite like to just use less pressure and consider how I can get a different outcome. Sorry, not a different outcome, a different relationship with my horse by using something that is more in tune with you and your values and beliefs. So that would be your homework. Have a go. I've been giving homework left, right, and centre. And my next session is going to be on the 25th of August, and we're going to be looking at the last two areas of the sessions, which is punishment and extinction, because you need to understand them if you're going to be successful in anything that you do with animals and in your own life. It's, as I said, they are fundamental, and they are they underpin all our training. At some point, we're going to be faced with using them or experiencing them or encountering them. So I'm going to stop recording, and I'm going to say, has anyone got anything they'd like to question? Unmute. Haven't fallen asleep?
No. I've got a young horse. He's not that young anymore, but he's had various bouts of training throughout his life with lots of breaks, because I've been incapacitated, and so I've been having to let other people do the training, and that sort of is very hard for me, because you've got to trust who you let your horse go to. So I have to wait until there's a suitable person that I would, trust to work with him, which aren't many. There's not many. So, so consequently, he's rising 9 and done very little. And I'm just about to have another operation. So it puts another bloody difficulty in the way. But because he's had so many issues in his life, he had a bad boat accident and got injured, and then one of the persons that I sent him to earlier on didn't have a good experience with him, and he came back very broken from that. So I've been, in the last few years, trying to undo all of that and get him back to the horse that he was. And in the last year, probably the last year, he's actually just changed so much, and I'm pretty happy where he is now. But yeah, and he's not a horse that you want to tell anything to.
Yeah.
He has to want to cooperate with you. So this, I think, will work really well with him. Yeah, such a huge thing, really. You don't want to muck it up.
No, and it's interesting you say that, no, because it's often those horses that get us to stretch or to look at other options because they don't follow the rules, or they've had bad experiences.
I'm learning all the time
Yeah.
from him. You know, I've had to change the way I react to what he does to, you know, make things progress.
And can you link that back to your values as well, you see? Because a lot of people
absolutely.
Say, well,
absolutely.
no, you just
I've changed 180 degrees to the person I probably grew up as a rider. So just over the last few years, learning a lot, and or perhaps I didn't know what I was doing at all, but now I'm hoping I'm getting a bit better.
Well, what's that great saying? You know, we do what we know, and we're often doing the best that we can with the knowledge that we have as well at the time. And I think, you know, once you know better, you try and do better. And there's so much more out there now.
I think I used to just react, and now that's not happening.
Oh, we've all been there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, thanks for sharing that.
No, that's fine. Well, it's all good. I'm very proud of him. You know, even though I've never ridden him, he's rising along. I haven't been on his back yet, but I've had, you know, 2 hip surgeries and heading for a third one. Yeah, I know. I've got 2 fake hips.
Oh my goodness.
So this makes things a little difficult, but we will get there.
Nothing like a challenge.
Yeah, I know. I feel like I certainly have a challenge, but, you know, in a way, but he is way less challenging to me now than he used to be. So must be doing something right.
You must. And if it's any consolation, well, not consolation, it should be just reassuring. I didn't back Jackson until he was 10.
Oh, well, that makes me feel lots better.
And he was so easy because of that long. I had him when he was 8. I was given him when he was 8, and he was unbacked, but had done a lot of positive reinforcement.
Well, so, I bred this one, and I sort of have had to rely on other people to do things when I couldn't. So it's not been ideal, but I'm just at the stage now. I thought, well, you know, if I'm not able to ride him at the moment, I'm just going to do other stuff.
Yeah.
And we'll get to the riding when the time is right. There's no point pushing it. But I was so tempted to hop on him end of last summer, but I thought, oh no, it's not quite there yet, but we'll get there.
Well, yep, you will. And that time that you've invested won't go unwasted at all.
No, I'm thrilled because he has really changed to a horse that couldn't have cared less about me to someone a horse that wants to approach me and be friendly. And so, you know, I think that's huge to me.
Yeah. Fantastic.
Yeah, very pleased.
Anyway,
can I
Hannah,
ask a question, Kate?
Yes.
Regarding the worming training.
Yeah.
Like, I get it, but then isn't there an element of broken trust when you do actually squeeze it in? Because it's quite different, that moment.
Yes. Look, we might have to hand over to the resident expert here. You're right. Yeah, to some degree, and with Jackson in particular. But remember, because you've got that history, they're much more forgiving. And we're kind of training tolerance as well, tolerance to uncomfortable procedures. But yes, there is definitely an element of that. And Anna, do you want to chip in here with because you have done a lot of it. What's your take?
Only in that, I only just wormed my lot today, funnily enough. It just never, I just can't believe that the most horrendous horses that you've come across that won't be wormed, and you think you do this little target training and then you increase it, and you get the worm and you think, oh man, they'll never be wormed again, you know, and then 5 minutes, you just test it, you go 5 minutes later, you go, we'll see if it works again, and they're up for it again. So they don't feel, they honestly, I expect for them to exactly feel how you described, and they're up for it again, and you think, no, I didn't really, you know, break their trust. They were okay with that. And it wasn't that, I was thinking about it today, it clearly isn't that horrendous a experience, because we've done, like you said, Kate, we've built it up.
Yeah. And
great.
It's like the old bank account, isn't it? You know, if you're depleted in the first place, you know, yes, you probably are gonna undermine.
You snatched it.
Yeah. But because you've got so much that history, and that is really important. The longer you've been doing it, the more frequent that trust, that consistency, they'll forget, you know, I say forgive, but you've just got that little bit more leeway. But I guess the alternative is, you know, what do we do if we can't worm them the nice way? We put those worming halters on, or we strap them into and jam it in. So it's kind of an interesting way of looking at what is the alternative, and if they've got that option and you have been consistent most of the time, you don't get that. It's not a complete breakdown. Does that kind of make sense, Hannah?
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's just reminds me how amazing and giving they are if they're willing to give it another whirl, like 5 minutes later. So cute.
Yeah.
And that's nice to know, because you know, I would hate to feel like I'm tricking them into it, and then boom.
It's a little bit tricky.
You can treat it like the lottery, can't you? You know, it's like the payout machine. What is it, the one-armed bandit? Every so often it pays out. So every so often it's a negative outcome. I shouldn't use that word because that's going to confuse it. Every so often it's an outcome that they don't want, but most of the time it's an outcome they want.
Well, my luck today, just so to make you feel better, Hannah, they were, although they didn't necessarily like that they were all wormed, they were all hanging around to find out what was going to happen next. You know, nobody ran away. They were like, they weren't offended. They were like, okay, what's next? I love that about positive reinforcement. They're like, and there might be something else. Just hang around.
If you hang around long enough, who knows?
It's interesting for them. And me.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Anything from Caroline? Any thoughts?
So this is going to sound really wishy-washy, but this is actually quite emotional, this stuff for me at the moment, because I'm actually going on a bit of a journey with all sorts of things, questioning a lot of my beliefs and my values and my all this and that and the other at the moment, and just listening to what you were talking about then with the positive reinforcement. What made me first start looking at it is because I was in the arena running around chasing him with a flag like a mad thing, and I suddenly stopped and thought, why am I doing this? He can't be enjoying this. Why am I doing this? Is horrible. This is horrible. I'm chasing around waving a flag at him. This you know, this isn't how I want to be treating him or being with him. And so that's when I really started looking at the alternatives, and the more you sort of think about it, the more you think it just makes perfect sense. It just makes perfect sense. And while I'm not against the whole pressure and release thing in certain situations, like I'm quite happy that I can touch his bum and he'll just move it over. But you know, that's good. That's a good thing for me. But you know, the whole positive reinforcement thing, all I've ever wanted to do with my horse or with my horses is for them to actually want to be with me and enjoy being with me. I don't want to chase them around with a flag, and I don't want to try and make them do something that they potentially don't want to do. So it's been a real sort of an eye-opener for me, really, just even, and I haven't even started on the journey really. I've had one session with Kate, and I've been sick for like weeks, and so we really haven't done much else, but they impressed me so much in that one session with Kate. And one's a 25-year-old old pony from Hong Kong who's never done anything like this before, I don't imagine, and he just, can you teach an old horse new tricks? Yes, you absolutely can. He was fabulous, and so I'm really looking forward to getting some consistency with them, because I know that both of them are just going to take to it like a duck to water, and it's really just reinforcing where I am going in my personal journey as well, in terms of exploring my values and things, and my work, and things that are just messing around with my values a bit, to actually think, you know what, no, that's not where I want to be. I don't want to be doing that. I don't want to live that life. I want to be more. And when you made that correlation between looking at the things in your personal life, that really struck a chord with me, and I thought, this is really where this is really where I want to be. I'm really, not that I'm a horrible person, but I'm really looking at how to be a better person at the moment, and how to be more, how can I put it? This is all very woo-ha, kumbaya stuff at the moment, but it's how to be more satisfied with my life, not looking at the negative things, not thinking, you know, why can't you just not drink beer on a Monday night? Why can't you just, you know, why do you have to drink on a weeknight? Why can't we just, you know, that sort of thing. But instead of thinking about why you're drinking on Monday night, you know, actually think about the fact that he didn't drink on a Tuesday night. That sort of thing. So, you know, just thinking about all those sorts of things that usually piss me off, to actually think, don't be pissed off about that stuff. Just don't. It's, you know, life's too short, and, you know, at the ripe old age of, you know, 57, I'm finally starting to learn about this stuff, so that's great.
Well, that was just amazing, Caroline. Thank you so much for sharing that.
Well, I wasn't going to.
Tingly.
I was going to just message you afterwards and tell you how good it was, but then you asked me, so I thought, oh, okay, I'm in the hot spot now, so I have to really share.
But I think everyone will have got something from that. That was really, I should say, kind of, or tingly.
Oh, that's nice.
Because I can hear in you what it means to me as well, which is it's just so much bigger than the horses.
Yeah, it is.
But equally, that's where the magic happens.
That is, because the horses are my happy place. Anyway, the horses are my happy place. So when I'm with them, I want to be doing happy stuff and not chasing them around with flags. You know, it's, you know, it just makes the happy place even happier.
Yeah.
It's good.
Oh, well, I just can't wait to hear how you're getting on with those two characters.
Yeah.
That was just incredible, wasn't it?
Yeah, they're good dudes. They're cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely. Tara and Christy, any comments?
Okay. Hi. We were muted. Did you think of anything? I don't know. I didn't actually, unfortunately, get to hear all of it tonight because I was talking to my little 7-year-old. But I was just thinking about, or just an experience we did have. Sorry about the finger licking in the background. Skylar, my 7-year-old's eating popcorn. It's a little bit distracting. Yeah, with Louis, Tara's done most of the training. I haven't done very much. Yeah. But it was a couple of weeks ago, she'd been doing the target training with Louis, and then we were swapping sort of 4 ponies between yards on the driveway.
Yeah.
Later in the day. and somehow, I don't know what happened, but we let go of Louis, and
He was moseying
he
on
was
the
moseying off,
driveway.
and he was picking up speed, and like I already had another, I think I had at least 2 ponies, and Tara was facing the other way with another one. Like, oh, this is bad, because I didn't, because he's quite quick when he does decide to move.
Yeah.
So I just yelled out, Louis, target. And he stopped and he was looking everywhere for it. And then I just made a clicking sound. And then Tara sort of popped out of somewhere in the next 5 seconds. But it was incredible how we kind of just, it worked for him to look and stop. Like I've
Yeah.
never had a horse stop when I've called them, when they're in that sort of slight
Yeah.
flight mode was starting to happen.
Yeah.
And it was so cool. Like it felt like such a success that, you know, normally when you
Yeah.
use your voice, they're like, see ya.
I'm gone. Well, there you go. Wow.
So that was cool, because he has got that really strong flight response. So I'm really curious to see where that's going to go.
Right, with-
Yeah, just with other
Yeah.
situations where we can possibly
Yeah.
just change his mind to stay with us, you know, when normally we've lost him.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm.
And the fact that you said target and he stopped and looked for it and you were able to mark the stop,
Yes.
that,
Yeah, that he actually tried to
Yeah.
look for it. And even though I
Yeah.
wondered whether it would even work, because I haven't done really any of the target training with him.
Mm.
Tara's
Yeah.
done it all. But, you know, that was obviously that process that he was
Yeah.
still, and he felt quite successful. Like, oh, yeah.
Good on you.
Yeah, I've just noticed there's been a lot of situations that almost feels like, whether it be our
Yeah.
situation or even seeing something unfold with someone else's horse, where things almost seem to slow down.
Mm.
Kind of think, oh, wait a minute, because you know, often things sort of escalate and you think, oh, more pressure, got to fix this problem.
Yeah.
But I felt like an inner slowing down since learning some of, or just having our minds open to the
Yeah.
positive reinforcement.
Yeah.
Oh, hang on, there's an opening there. You could do that. And Tara and I have talked about that. That's me trying to put it into words, but after
Yeah.
we've seen things unfold with our horses or someone else's, we thought, oh, that could have gone that way. You could have done that. Or
Yeah.
so that's what I really like. I feel like there's this unraveling.
Which is kind of what I put in that last slide, what triggers you, and maximizing the learning opportunities.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you've seen opportunities, and it's the slowing down. I really liked that. I think you're right.
Yeah.
And you have confidence because the more you use it, the more you know it works.
Mm.
And you can slow down, whereas a lot of our tenseness comes from we're not sure we're going to get the result we want.
Yeah, so we start to kind of apply more pressure quickly.
Yeah. But when you know that what you're doing is the right, and you will get a result, it may not be instant as you want, but that gives you that confidence. Because I talked a lot about what is confidence? Because again, it's a construct. You can't really see it, but what behaviors are linked to confidence? And it's that you're knowing an outcome, knowing you're going to get a result. You do something and you know what's going to happen. So interesting. Thank you for that. Anything else? Anybody got any other little gems? So any take homes? Anything they want to share before we sign off? No. Look, thank you so much for joining me tonight, and it was fantastic to see Nairi. You made it.
Yeah, I forgot last time. Completely forgot.
And a surprise to see Caroline. Thank you. And and I really hope that you will join me on the 25th for the next session. I will be launching the event again. And if you've got any feedback, please, I would really appreciate that as well. Always up for if you think anything's missing in terms of audience participation, do let me know, because I'm trialing this. I'm just not used to doing presentations on Zoom.
I think you're doing a great job.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, it's not easy. I've just had to start doing Zoom
Yeah.
things with my clients, and it's like, oh God, it's quite
Yeah.
nerve-wracking initially.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I can understand.
Mm.
You know, it's
And
great
you
when
work
it
on-
goes well, and
Yes,
learn every time
you
that you
do.
do it.
And I think it's just going to become the new way of being, really. So
Yes.
so thank you,
Yeah.
everybody. Really great to see you all. And yep, log in for the 25th, same time, for Punishment and Extinction, which sounds scary.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
Thank you. Very nice to meet you all.
Yeah,
Very much. See ya.
brilliant.
Bye.
See you later. Bye.
Thanks. See you later.
Bye.